Om Sahanā-Vavatu Sahanā Bhunaktu Saviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Humble Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Okay, we pick up here. We discussed the qualifications yesterday. And Shankara takes us into the setup now, and we'll talk a little bit about the setup and the questions. And we can say this. The qualifications, we begin to become qualified as students without knowing it. In other words, the first qualification is going to be vairagya, the beginning of vairagya, and really there's no... and the other great concept that's shared with us, the Sanskrit word vichara, or right inquiry. And right inquiry doesn't start until vairagya has begun. And what we're talking about is that some dispassion for the things of the world has to come first. And that's really the beginning of the blossoming of the seeker after truth. We've been seeking for how long? Here, Lakshmi, cat, so soul in cat body. Does she seek? Mm-hmm. What is she seeking? Food. Food and attention, love, display of love. Yeah. Food and love. That's it. That's what she's seeking. What do the ants seek? Do the ants seek? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are they seeking? Same thing. When the grass grows towards the sun, do you suppose there's seeking happening? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's intentionally moving towards the sun. And we used to say perhaps that there's no intelligence involved in the process at all, that it just happens, but that misses the point, because there is a process and there is a movement towards, and there's an intelligence underlying the process. And so again, we could say it just happens, but there is a subliminal desire or movement towards. And so seeking even is happening there.
Sometimes with the plants, it's very clear that they were moving in a certain direction.
Yes.
There is a clear intelligence, and it's not like randomness.
Yes. And so you can say they seek food and water as well, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of the movement. So point is, we've always been seeking, but the shift is in the human birth, and we were talking about the rarity of the human birth yesterday, in Shankaracharya's words. He said all of the beings long for a human birth. And why? Do they know that they're longing for a human birth? Not necessarily. But they know that they're seeking a state of higher comfort. Mm-hmm. Swami Prabhavananda used to say, everything that we do in order to stop doing it. And it's a funny observation. Of course, he'll laugh when he says it. But if you look, you see it so. Why do we eat? We eat in order to be sated, right? Sated is satisfied. We eat in order to be satisfied. Why do we have sex? In order to satisfy some urge, yes? Why do we go to work? In order to do something that we want to do that will satisfy us. In the worldly life, it's like this. So everything is satisfaction. Yeah. Everything is being done in order to stop doing. And the point being made is that in human birth, this switch is possible, which is the which is the coming from the seeking after pleasure and avoidance of pain to the interest in what's higher. And for the interest in what's higher to really blossom, disinterest in the lower has to develop. And that's vairagya. So this happens naturally. Vichara begins to happen naturally. But how many births? Shankaracharya said 100 billion. 100 billion. And the Sanskrit word punya, and I'll thank Leela Mai for planting the seed on this one. Punya is a word meaning merit. So it wasn't just 100 billion births. It was, what he's saying is the punya, or the merits from 100 billion well-lived births. Seeking after, and of course what happens is we get what we seek, and yet the satisfaction remains elusive. Yeah? And that's our situation, and there's no real satisfaction here living in the world, seeking the worldly. And that's the vairagya that begins to blossom, because we were discussing yesterday, there is that urge within us. And it's not just an urge. When we check in, there's really a knowing that there is greater than this. Yeah? Because it continues to propel us.
Right.
It doesn't stop. Even the depressions, even when we long to kill ourselves, long for that relief. It's a relief. It's a satisfaction that's still being longed for. That there's something that says it exists. And so we've been preparing, everyone participating in this discussion, or we've been being prepared, however we look at it. We could say the world has been preparing us. But we've been preparing in this process of evolution. We've continued to seek what was more, and if we allow for this, and this concept is shared with us in the Eastern traditions in particular. We start with, if we allow for this, or accept, we don't have to completely believe, but at least allow for being soul and being involved in a process of evolution. And where are we evolving to? Really, we're evolving to who we are. Free of encumbrances, free of limitations. As soon as we take on the limitations seem to bind us and cause us to suffer. And so we play for a while, but then we want to be free of the limitations. And so,
And also on the path, we will find like rough, dark patches where even the spiritual things we won't find satisfaction.
It's true. It's true. And yet something still urges us forward.
Yeah.
Even the spiritual path, it seems like it's a moving target. Yeah, indeed. So that's what brings us here. And the here is, and this here, we were reading something not long ago. We were reading from Swami Chinmayananda, his introduction to the Ashtavakra Gita. And it wasn't Ashtavakra Gita, it was Mandukya Upanishad. Because Mandukya Upanishad starts with the teaching. Normally the Upanishads start with a dialogue happening between a student and a teacher. And Mandukya did not start that way. And what Swami Chinmayananda was expressing is we have to assume that or picture that. Because always the teaching can only start with this situation where there is a student. And what is a student? A student is one who has vairagya, has this student for Vedanta, student for highest truth. What is this really? Yeah? When these questions start to blossom. Such a student has to have had the beginning of the qualification. It has to have happened. And then we can work to further qualify. When we get into the virtues, these are areas of practice. Yeah, all of them. Dhamma, for example, is very clearly a practice, which is controlling the senses. Uparati is very clearly a practice, which is controlling the mind and withdrawing it from the senses and the sense objects. Yeah. So these can be developed, and these are developed through the practice of yoga. Even vairagya can be developed. It can become stronger and stronger. Yeah. And vichara, the questioning, I remember the question I got stuck on is, what is this world? Because the world didn't make any sense. This is where we had come. What does that mean, the world didn't make any sense? It means that recognizing, which was amazing grace, to simply realize, and these words had come earlier, which is, wait a second, all I ever wanted was to be happy. And we've in this worldly life, we've been going through the motions, and we even forget that happiness or satisfaction is the aim. And we get caught up in it with the ego center, with the delusion, which is quite active, telling us that yes, there is more, that urge, yes, there is more money to get, or there's a different girl to get, or there's the urge for higher has always been there, but it gets corrupted here.
Right.
And so having lived with that, and this, we all do this, we all get stuck here, and having lived with that and recognizing, but wait a second, all I wanted was happiness. Why in the world did I forget that? And there's an answer for it. And this is the teaching that we're involved in. And the world that I thought existed, it doesn't make any sense at all, because where is it? The realization clearly, I don't know where it is. So where is it? Does anyone know where it is? And that quest naturally leads us to, and led me to, the feet of someone who knew where it is. And we call that person teacher or guru. Really, a good teacher is one who won't call themselves a teacher. They perhaps have given the role of it. And guru is never outside. Guru is always inside. Guru remains inside, the inner authority. And yet what we call teacher or guru of Vedanta is simply one who was a student, asked the questions, developed the qualifications because they had to, because they had come to realize that life without being in quest of that which is higher, and life trying to get the higher in the lower is fruitless, and of course, when we begin to come to the teachings, that's stoked. We realize, oh my God, it is fruitless. But until that point, we very much have to live in the world, and very much have to learn, and very much have to apply ourselves. And by the way, we find that our successes in the world, when we live what people call a successful life, does actually help to prepare us, because some of these qualities are developed in learning how to focus on worldly goals. So we don't denigrate that life either. But when we hear the call to that which is higher and recognize that this won't satisfy, then we seek, what do we seek? We seek someone who's happy. We seek someone who knows. And someone who has that heart of compassion. And the heart of compassion doesn't even belong to the individual. The heart of compassion naturally flowers as you come to know. As you strip away the false, the heart of compassion naturally blossoms. And so here in the text, Shankara extols the one who knows and who has the heart of compassion. Interestingly enough, that the one who knows and has the heart of compassion, that's universal. Those are universal qualities. So they've stripped away what is not to some extent, or maybe a great extent. And of course, at that point, live not for themselves any longer. Live not to get something or have something, because at some point we realize that there's nothing here to get. And by the way, I don't need anything. I don't need something. So we see, and then we have our questions, and that's really where we pick up. In this process, this is a timeless process. This process has been playing out. By now we know that there are countless universes, and the universe itself is infinite, and there are civilizations all through it. And so if we allow for the development of the soul towards freedom, as it were, and if we allow ourselves to accept that most likely does involve many births, and somehow we get to this point where we've been prepared to recognize that this isn't it, and we start asking these questions, and the answers to the questions, they do exist. And we can find them by being present with texts, and also quote-unquote individuals who have been through the same process as us and have come to live them, the teachings, the principles, and embody them. And so we come to this place. And if we accept that we're all in a journey and we're all growing, and if we look at our individual experience, we have to see that we're growing. Are you growing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Physically, no. I mean, that stops after a while, but it's clearly not what we mean. Although Swami's still growing, I've just been growing out this one over the last few years. If you compare pictures of this from pilgrimage days and now 9 years later, a lot of growth. But of course, the growth we're talking about is the movement towards freedom. That it feels like at some point we're making progress. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but that urge then urges you towards progress. Even the great depressions that come, please forgive, but there's such a great aid in this process, because through the depression, the old stuff that we were holding on to, imagining to be fruitful, we let go of it. It dies. And that's what the depression is something in us has died. But what's died is a particular pursuit that we've come to see as fruitless. It doesn't have fruit. And so, but we thought that was going to make us happy. And so, of course, we enter depression. But then that within us that's urging us forward never goes away, thank God. And so we come through. And then we're here. And then we have the questions, and this is where we pick up. The disciple speaks. Master, please listen to the questions I am about to ask. I shall feel blessed if I may hear an answer from your lips. What in reality is this bondage? And we'll take a moment with each of these questions he asks. They're all related. We won't answer it this morning, but as we step through. So, have you ever felt like you're trapped? Just practically speaking. Yeah. And each of you joining, have you felt it? You can touch that feeling. I remember it. There was a point, in fact, when Vichara was just beginning to blossom, where I was just beginning to ask fruitful questions, where not only did I feel trapped, I used to read Edgar Allan Poe, and had a very dark aspect to the mind related to the quest and not finding. Yeah. And that's Edgar Allan Poe. And I had this image of being in a rut, which I realized a little bit later I myself had caught. But it was so deep I could not even see the light outside of it. And so, and that was through the whole depression. It was like that. Through the first couple of years or so of it, where I wanted to kill myself all the time, it was like that. I actually felt myself as being in this chasm that I couldn't even see the light out of. Nothing I could do could seem to get. So bondage. Trapped is really a way that we can relate to it these days, feeling trapped. So what really is it? This is the first question that the student is asking. Tell me in reality, what is this bondage? And by the way, as this vairagya is really blossoming, if you notice, you see, at some point we may get to the point where nothing does it. Nothing relieves the bondage. I used to try a lot, and nothing would do it. So really a feeling of hopelessness is coming at some point as well. As if I'm being prevented from the happiness which I'm being urged, or satisfaction. Maybe satisfaction is even a better word, that I long for, that is the most important thing to me in the world. And yet I'm prevented from having it. So, and I feel stuck here in this horrible place. So what is this bondage? How did it begin? In what is it rooted? That's the first question. Second question, how is a man set free from it? Best question. Very practical question. How is one set free from it? So how to go beyond it, how to get out of it. And then, what is the non-Atman and what is the Atman, supreme Atman? And one more after that, but okay, a little discussion about Atman. Atman's a very unfamiliar term. And the Eastern translations are also unfamiliar to us. So we can say soul, but if we take a moment, from when we started this, those that were with us the first day or two, or if you want to look back in the series, we were discussing this aphorism from Shankaracharya, and the aphorism is, Brahman Satyam, Brahman is the reality, and Jagat Mithya, the world is illusory. And we discussed some over the last days in terms of the philosophy, these points. And then Jivo, Brahmeva, Naparaha. Jivo is Atman. And we discussed some then. Jiva, individualized soul. So soul is not something other. And what we want to catch is that the I, not the I with qualities, but the subject, the I to whom everything happens, including desires arising. The desires that arise, they're not mine per se. The desires arise in the mind. And I experience them. And it seems like I am bound to them. This is the bondage that's being discussed. So a little preview, of course. So it's this I is really, in a way, what the student is asking here. What is the not I? And what is the I? And then the next question, how to discriminate between the two? And if we relate to the question that way, you can see it's a very insightful, very to ask the question, and he understood what he was asking. To ask the question indicates a great bit of development already. Yeah? Because somehow he's come to the student here, again, invariably we get here, but really through having asked other questions previously, and some study and some development in prior births or this one. Some work needs to come before this, but who am I and what is not me? This question, like this. And how to discriminate between the two. Why would I need to discriminate between the two? Because somehow I am in bondage, or I am suffering. And I don't feel that the suffering is me, and I feel that there's a way out of it. So what is the way out of it? This is the question he's asking. And then, how do I tell the difference between I and not I? And we'll continue with this directly. Now, the teacher answers, and I'm just trying to put a little bit of color in on how great these questions that have been asked are. Because these are the essential questions. How in the world do we get to the place? I remember many years ago, people back in the 70s, young people were trying to find themselves. And I used to laugh about it. And because I was sure that I didn't need to find myself, because how could I not know myself? And at some point, I quit laughing about it. But to know that I don't know myself is quite advanced. Huh? And to feel the need to know myself and to feel that that's important is quite advanced. And so the teacher has to say something about this. How do you think the teacher feels when the student comes to him or her and asks these questions? How do they feel about the student who's asking these questions?
How does the teacher feel?
Yeah, about the student who's asking the best questions that there are to ask.
He feels delighted.
They feel delighted. Indeed. Absolutely delighted. So the teacher speaks, and we'll just read a little bit of this for the close this morning. The teacher speaks. You are blessed indeed. You are drawing near to the goal. Through you, your whole family has become purified, because you long to get free from the bondage of ignorance and to reach Brahman. Children may free their father from his debts, but no other person can free a man from his bondage. He must do it himself. Others may relieve the suffering caused by a burden that weighs upon the head, but the suffering which comes from hunger and the like can only be relieved by oneself. The sick man who takes medicine and follows the rules of diet is seen to be restored to health, but not through the efforts of another. A clear vision of the reality may be obtained only through our own eyes when they have been opened by spiritual insight, never through the eyes of some other seer. Through our own eyes we learn what the moon looks like. How could we learn through the eyes of others? Those cords that bind us because of our ignorance, our lustful desires, and the fruits of our karma, how could anybody but ourselves untie them, even in the course of innumerable ages? Neither by the practice of yoga or Sankhya philosophy, nor by good works, nor by learning does liberation come, but only through a realization that Atman and Brahman, I and the Father, are one. Only through the realization. And he's saying this we have to do ourselves. Yeah. So he's saying, in modern English, he's saying, I'm your friend, I know the way. I'll help, I'll support you, but you have to do it. But by the very fact that you ask these questions, it's auspicious because you're there. This indicates that you're ready for this, the fact that you ask these questions. You didn't ask how to make more money.
It also means you're already doing something to get that.
It means that there's been much practice, interestingly, whether we know it or not, before. Or you could say we've lived a full life, or full lives, many births. And we've checked a lot of boxes by that point. And we've come to the place where we understand what the most important questions are. And that, for all of us, is the most important. When I travel and offer retreats and satsangs, etc., and we have a lot of opportunities to meet with people one-to-one, and it's something that we offer. It's just something that we do. And the one thing that I ask, I'm happy to meet with anyone. There are areas where I could be beneficial. There are other areas where I'm not likely to be beneficial, but we know enough about Google Swami to guide people towards that also. But I'll say it always has to start with a question, and this is so. To have an answer, we have to be able to formulate the question. And the question has to be important for us. It needs to be well formulated. We need to have worked it out inside. What is my question? What do I really want to know? And of course, what happens invariably is when I sit with people and they've done it, they come to me and they say, well, I already got answers to most of the questions I asked. But I still have this one or this one. So, okay. So the questions are asked. The teacher has raved about the student and helped give the student confidence that because you're asking these questions, then you're closer to the goal. You're close to the goal. But then he's also steeling him up. He's also telling him or her, but also know that these questions you ask, you're going to have to learn this yourself. I can't do it for you. So I can help you to find the answers to the questions. So, okay, let's close for the morning. Hari, would you please check and see if we have any questions or comments?
Mirabai saying, what grace did you listen to this today?
Jaima.
So, no questions.
Okay. Okay, so we close final prayers, page 156 in the Kirtan book, and then Arati. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Shantu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashento, Makashi Tukabhak Bhave, Asato Ma Satgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya, Mrityoy Ma Amritam Gamaya, Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat, Purnamudashate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vasishate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble our Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. And for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Okay, we'll stand for our